And that, boys and girls, is how you get sued.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Lose all
We're
your
not
rentals
going to teach.
20s
We're
and
not
stuff.
going to teach everybody how to get sued. This is the Lumberjack Landlord. Glad to have you here on our Friday impromptu live stream. Thankfully, not all of Seattle and the entire state of Washington is burning, so Mike Newton was able to make himself available today. Millennial Mike, thanks for coming and hanging out. I was just telling him, I was like, you know what? I might have to block you on social media because I've seen so many of your shorts. He's absolutely crushing it in the game. And I'm fatigued just watching it. So, you know, but I burn out easy. So it's okay. It's not even a thing, but good to see you, boys. So, yeah, what I wanted to talk about today is, good riddance. Bye.
Yeah.
I have a tenant from hell, who is finally leaving me. She's brought 6 of the 10 plagues of Egypt, you know, and done a very good job of finding ways to push the threshold of being a new level of disgusting. And so I'm very excited, that, you know, when the door hits her, with the good Lord split her, it might be a big enough impact to put her in a coma. There's a lot of surface area there. But super, I know, so inappropriate.
Okay.
But
We're fat kids. We can call people fat. Mike can't get away with it.
exactly. Yeah. Mike can't
Say
call
anything.
someone fat. I can call someone fat all I want. I'm on the bus. Yeah. I'm the one going back for the 3rd buffet. That's value investing as well, in case you didn't know. Yeah, so I think what I wanted to kind of start out with was just kind of taking people through it to make sure, they kind of don't feel alone. That we all have had bad tenants. We all have bad tenant stories. You know, the good, there's a lot of great tenants out there, just like there's a lot of great landlords out there. And then there's some just absolutely horrible tenants and some absolutely horrible landlords. But I wanted to kind of take you guys through it only because I think it's important that we always share the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you want to see ugly, see my Instagram. You know, kind of taking you guys through it, we basically had gotten a call, you know, about 2 months ago, saying that this tenant had a pest problem. And so I got the pest guy out there within 6 days, pretty fast. So he was out there within 6 days, does an inspection. He's like, yep, okay, I can definitely see where you've got some pests. And pests meaning, in this case, this was one of the ones that we were talking about, rats. He looked at it and he's like, yeah, they put a bunch of stuff on this back porch and it's created a house for these rats. And she's like, she put garbage there. And so they were feeding, and now it's their home. And I was like, well, they can't stay because they're not paying rent. And so
No pets.
yeah, and no pets. Yeah, exactly. And no pets. But we don't have city rats here. City rats can be the size of a kitty cat. Our rats are more the size of like a little bit bigger than a hamster, maybe a gerbil. And this is all new to me in the last like 18 months. This had never been a thing for me in my landlord journey ever. But she started throwing trash back there. Then she started throwing it just outside. She wouldn't buy the bags the town needs her to buy. And so I start getting complaints from the city. And I tell the city, I said, well, stop trying to find me, find the tenant. I know who's throwing it out there. I have it in black and white that she was the one throwing it out there. Like, that's not our policy. I was like, I can appreciate your policy, but your policy's bad. You want to find the person, you want to find me because I can't control my tenant. Do you want the trash picked up or not?
Yeah.
If you want to solve the problem, you need to find the person that's creating the problem, not find the person that's that's got the same problem as you. Mm-hmm. So the good news is that I'm working with the city to identify a code in the city that says, if it can be proven that you are the person throwing out the trash and you're the one making a mess of the place, then you're going to start getting ticketed. And that will come in and people are like, who cares? So you get a $20 ticket. When you can't renew your license, that's going to be a problem. You're going to need to pay all those tickets. So we went through this back and forth. She kept on making up all this stuff, you know, like, well, there's this problem, there's that problem. And Dion, I instantly thought of you, not when the problem part came, But I instantly thought of you when the inspector, when you go off on your rant about there's one communist division of housing that you've worked with in the past.
Never to name anybody by name, but Lakewood, Washington sucks.
Yep. And so that bouncing around in my empty head. And I'm like, okay, maybe. And this is a new inspector. And so I've tried to be patient with him in the last 6 months, but he walked it and literally just walked with a clipboard what she had to say. So she called housing on me. She called the city on me. And she had been told exactly what to do in order for us to treat the place. And so this is where being a good landlord, having systems and processes, I was able to provide that email that was dated 3 weeks earlier. I said, before she even called you, I'd already told her what she needed to do to get the job, to get it fixed and have the problem eradicated. And she refused to do it. She wouldn't clean the space. And she's like, nope, you need to clean it. I was like, it's not my trash. It's not my junk. It's yours. You need to clean it. You created the problem. She's like, well, it's disgusting back there. You made it disgusting. And by the way, I've seen you. You have no problem with disgusting. So this is what happens. So then I talked to the city code enforcement. City code enforcement says to me, he goes, I went there. He goes, there's a few issues. He said, but it's cleanliness issues on her part. And I said, okay, I really appreciate that. And he said, and none of the other issues that she pointed out are life safety issues. They are not issues in my eyes as a code enforcement officer. I said, I appreciate that. I agree with you. However, to Dion's point, she reports to housing. They send an inspector out. He literally clipboard just writes down everything that she says and doesn't cite her for the garbage on the back deck, doesn't cite her for all the stuff back there, doesn't put any notes about their lack of cleanliness and lack of hygiene, doesn't put anything in the report about that. So as you can tell, maybe I'm a little turned up on this. Maybe I'm going a little bit apoplectic deep down on the inside. And so I actually call, and so housing sends me a letter and says, hey, this is a problem. We're not going to pay you for July. They say this in June. And I was like, the tenant's been shown a number of times. She needs to take care of this. And they're like, well, we sent out our inspector and he didn't make any of those notes. I said, it's because your inspector sucks and he's completely inept. And so I then sent them an email and I said, here's from the infestation people, or from the pest people. Here is from my property manager, and here is from the neighbor. And then here's my statement, and here's all the pictures of proof on different dates. Our inspector didn't find that. Well, then your inspector just graduated from the School of Helen Keller officers. Like, he sucks. And so I told him, I said, that sounds good. I said, all you've done is make sure that I never do business with you again. And I said, you've given me nowhere to turn. There's no accountability whatsoever with that agency. None. And so while I have some good tenants from your agency, you take no action when we have any issue, even when it's a self-inflicted by the tenant. And so I think we're kind of done here. So they didn't pay me for July, and she found another place. And shame on that new landlord. I'm glad that landlord is clearly not thorough. She has a 560 credit score. She's been unemployed for 20 years. And she depends 100% on the system for everything. And she's a well-abled, capable 40-year-old that just got in the system early. And so now we're in a position where I'm literally the housing called me and said she's actually seeking from you for you to acquiesce, not the word they used, give in. I like the word acquiesce better. But to give in on the 30 days notice. And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. My cleaning guys are much more expensive. I'm happy to clean it, get it all wrapped up and done so I can treat the place, eradicate the problem, and be done with her as a horrible garbage tenant. And more importantly, done with you as a lousy housing authority. So
you really got to know your agencies. We've got the 2 counties here where I invest, and there's one I won't work with and one I love to work with.
Yep. So Dion, that's my story. So and now I've gone back in an exchange back and forth with her. She's like, I sent you an email. I said, right. You have sent me an email. with nothing in the body. I need an explanation of what you're looking for.
It's all in the subject line. She just typed it out for like an hour
Yeah,
and a half.
she literally her very first email was, "Hi, Matt, it's so-and-so, nothing else." And I wrote her back and I said, "I got a blank email." And she's like, "Oh, you want me to put the story in there?" Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So you said, send me an email. So she literally just,
She literally sent me an email saying, "Hi, Christina." I was like, "We're not testing this. You've gotten 10 emails from me telling you what to do to clean the place up." Like, honest to God, Jesse Thomas, I completely agree with you. I wish the WWE Raw vibe was in real life. I would pay money to do a cage match with this woman because she completely ruined my place after we rehabbed it. Thankfully, I'll be able to clean it up for about $5,000, and she's going to get a nice big fat bill that she will likely never pay. But I'll at least get a settlement against her and ruin her credit and put her in a position where she should at least recognize that she needs to treat people better. And likely it's not going to work, but it will certainly make me feel better. And so, Dion, I yield to the floor.
So, Jesse, welcome to the live. What I really like about the content that we put out is we put out some shorts that kind of say, here's some concepts on what we do to try to say, you should maybe check out our longer content. Then we make some edited videos where we cover a topic. But these live streams, the reason these are important is because this is top of mind awareness. Right now, somebody can put a question in the chat. When we make an edited video, we had days to research, to make sure we fact checked ourselves, because the comment section is going to try when we put anything out. But what does an investor keep as top of mind awareness that we don't have to look up, right? If somebody asks me how to run the numbers on a house hack, that's going to come out. If somebody says, on a reverse 1031 exchange, if you're crossing state lines and you have 3 LLCs involved, do you need to talk to a CPA? I have no freaking clue. And we're going to go research the answer to that question, right? So then you would know that tax questions, you don't have to know by heart. But when it comes to running the numbers and able to look at a property and make a decision in 15 seconds on whether you're going to continue to spend time looking at that deal, that's what we keep top of mind. How to get rid of problem tenants. What will you tolerate? I have a tenant that is not, I don't say anywhere near what yours is, but this was one, it was an inherited tenant. So I purchased a property, the tenant lives there. First thing I notice is it's not clean on the outside. I don't care about the inside. I don't live there, but the outside's not clean.
Yeah.
I was called for super trivial things. So I had to have several Dion talks to educate the tenant about the 3 words when you can call me. The rest is text or email. And then the tenant turned into a fairly decent tenant, but about every 2 years, the tenant reaches out and says, and they watch my channel. So I'm going to say what happens on your channel because I don't know that they would find us here. This person says, I'm a single parent with 2 kids. My current relationship of the month hasn't worked out and isn't providing me support. So this month I might not be able to pay the rent. I'm checking if that's okay. So about every 2 years, I have the same conversation. And I say, here's my response. So a tenant, I would go, and if this tenant moves out, I'm great with it because it's currently a 2-bedroom with a den. The den has a closet and 2 ways in, and it's a 3-bedroom, right?
Yeah,
it's
it
just
is.
not a 3-bedroom now.
Yeah,
so
it
I've
is.
put in 1 wall and a door. So I'm looking forward to this tenant leaving, right? When you're negotiating, when you're buying a property or when you're talking to tenants, the person with the ability to walk away has the power.
Yeah.
So since I kind of want the tenant to go, even though the binder strategy got the rent where I wanted it to for a 2-bedroom, I would like it to be a 3-bedroom. I instantly give my Dion talk when a tenant asks if they can pay their rent late. I explain the 2 things that are going to happen. First, absolutely, right? We can even talk about the late fees. That's kind of negotiable.
Yep.
But the date that it hits the end of the grace period, I'm serving you with eviction papers. So this, like for July, when they reached out, this because it's been 2 years, I said, no problem. I'll get the papers ready and I'll have you served with eviction papers as a favor the day that it's late. No hesitation. Just this is what's going to happen, because now you can go apply for rental assistance. You can't even talk to those agencies until you have the eviction papers. And then I have the math of time conversation, right? You have 4 weeks to save up the rent for an average month. If we let you go a week late, you're only going to have 3 weeks for next month. So we're kind of setting up for failure.
Right.
20 minutes later, it's either Venmo or Google Pay, whichever one this tenant uses, full payment, I've got it figured out. Thanks for your consideration. Blah blah blah. In 2 years, I expect the
Amazing.
exact same conversation.
Yes, so true. And again, at the end of the day, it's like with these tenants, listen, we're all landlords. We're in the business. We're not like the crash bro doofuses who read charts and interpret data and anecdotally hear something and then go shopping for the worst development out of 7 developments to get a point across that isn't the actual truth. It's more just this fits the narrative because they did something wrong with how they're doing it. The other 6 developments are selling out and selling like hotcakes. This one's awful. So I'm going to use this as the example to show how bad everything is. Fraud. And that's what makes you a fraud, in my opinion, is when you're showing something that's not the actual truth. It's showing a portion of the story. I shared with you guys the entire back and forth because I want people to know this is why I built a course. Now, it still gets me spun up because I know it's going to cost me thousands of dollars. I know the person's a deadbeat, in my opinion, and that they don't pay their bills, in my opinion, because I've seen it. And so the challenge for me is that, yeah, get a little bit amped up about it because it's going to cost me thousands of dollars. None of it was my fault. All of it was her fault. The problem's only gotten worse. And so my only remedy in this case is to let her go so I can then go file paperwork against her. And you know what? Sometimes this is just what has to happen. It's the way it goes. Sometimes that's just what has to happen. But that's the stuff that we teach in my course is here's all the documents to alert them of all their lease violations. Here's the process of how you then handle that interaction. So she's now finally sent me an email that actually has a body to it and actually says what it needs to say in order for me to approve something. And then I will approve it and then I will send it to housing. And I am more than happy that the door hit her where the good Lord split her because I want to never see this person again. She is a horrible tenant. But here's the thing. This is the part that bothers me the most. I will spend thousands of dollars repairing the unit. I will spend thousands of dollars also taking her through the court process. Not for me. I know she's a deadbeat in my opinion, and she's not going to pay her bill. Here's what I have to do. I got to make sure I'm protecting the next landlord that just does the right thing and just does a background check or just does a credit check. Somebody is accepting her with this 560 credit score. Somebody is accepting her without a landlord reference. Somebody is accepting her not knowing what the whole deal is. And do you think she's going to be honest? No. Trust but verify. And one of the things that I learned a long time ago in being a GC, general contractor, is people do what's inspected, not what's expected. So because of that, you've got to follow up. So I would say this, good riddance, bye-bye. And just to protect the next landlord that's willing to do the homework, because she's not going to be in the next place for very long either. She was in the previous place for 2 or 3 years. She was in this place for 2 or 3 years. Guess what? She's going to be in the next place for 2 or 3 years because that's what she does. So I got to do my part because I have the funds to do it. I got to do my part to make sure I'm helping out my fellow landlord that will do their part and just do their job. The downside is there's too many landlords that don't fully execute and don't take care of things. And now this guy's going to end up in the same boat that I am later. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Mike, you sitting all there looking all sheepish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're so hot and bothered.
Come at me, bro.
You're so hot and heated right now. You're a little hot under the collar right now.
Yeah.
The point is you need to turn on one of those free air conditioning units you've been handing out. That's what I think. So you tell that story to me.
Marina won the argument on whether Mike should get the G.I. Jane haircut or not.
You like that? This is what I call my Natalie Portman right here. No, yeah, it looks real good. So anyways, fellas, when it comes to losing tenants, I got one that's bailing as well. And I'm just, so heartbroken. So this was the first tenant I had in Gary, Indiana. I've had him for over 3 years, like 4 years at this point. And, all through the pandemic, all through the non-payment, the late payment, and they pay every year they pay late. And I collect all the rent for the entire year. I just never collect it on time. And I collect all the late payments for the entire year. And finally, they've decided that it's just not for them anymore. They just don't want to be here anymore because the neighborhood's unsafe. Well, it's Gary, Indiana. So, you might feel some type of way about it, but it's definitely safe. But I'm heartbroken because the rent that was $900 when I purchased it will now go up to $1,250 a month upon their leaving. And I just got the bill from one contractor for $6,000 to turn the unit. And I got my contractor going in there who'll probably do it for like $3,000. So I'll spend $3,000 to increase rents $350 a month. It will now rent for $1,250. The mortgage payment still $350 a month. So I'm just heartbroken to lose this tenant to what I will be getting as a Section 8 tenant with guaranteed income. So that's my sob story. And you're right, Matt, and you're right, Dion. There was a president at one point who, before he became the world's most hated man, wrote a popular book called The Art of the Deal. And it's amazing how when you're the one who has the power to walk away in a negotiation, when you don't care, when you can say, all right, I'm out, you have all of the power. And typically you get what you want.
True story. So I'll just run through real quick. Chenda, good to see you. Rob, good to see you. I know there's a rude comment coming from Rob, I'm sure. Jesse Thomas, hopefully you enjoyed the WWE Rob vibe. Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel that way. Like I said, I'd pay money for a cage match. And I'll put all the money in charity, but she'd probably want that too. Sets me off, subhumans look up. Yeah, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, it's really a challenge, but if you're working with a good housing authority, they will work in that process to recognize that has to be accountability on the tenant side as well. I quickly shut up the code enforcement officer and the housing authority. I quickly shut them up when I sent them all the emails. I said, this has been going on for 6 weeks and I've been trying to get in there and she won't do what I asked her to do. And they're like, oh, and I was like, yeah, but I bet she didn't tell you that part, did she? So she's in housing for the rest of her life. That's never going to change. She's never going to go out and get a job and become productive in society, even though she's well-bodied. Not going to happen. So the challenge will remain for her with that housing authority ongoing because she's going to be moving every couple of years. Rob, sounds like a girlfriend I had. See, I knew there was a comment coming. Jesse Thomas, hey guys, new to Lumberjack Live. Good to have you here, Jesse Thomas. Bill O'Connell, hello, sir. Rob, yep, Matt's therapy session. Yeah, it's cheaper for sure. And
wait, Jesse Thomas, hold on, Jesse Thomas. Yeah. I'm curious, how did you find the Lumberjack? You should leave that down below. Did you find him off a video or how? I'm just always curious to how people find our little group.
That's true. Yeah, because it is a great group, great community we have. T, hello everyone. Hello, T. Chandra, neighbor threatening to sue me about a tree standing at the property line inside your fence of the rental property close to her house. The tree is alive and well, but big. What's the best action? Dion.
The reason Matt threw this at me is because my family is a bunch of arborists. My dad and both my brothers own tree services. I grew up doing that. Hated it so much I joined the Marine Corps because that would be easier. And here's a couple of the things to think of when you're dealing with trees on your property. First, let's put you in the position of your neighbor, the one who's threatening to sue you. The tree's on your property, so they have property that can be damaged by your tree. If your tree from your property falls onto their property and damages their car, their house, that is their insurance claim, not yours. So the reason they are threatening litigation is because if they've sent you an email or a registered letter that says, I think your tree is dangerous, that actually puts the onus on you. If that tree now damages their property, it's not a claim on their insurance. It would be on your insurance. So your solution, because they're trying to protect themselves, that's the reason for the communication, is to have an arborist come out. You can get a free estimate. So I wouldn't call tree services and say, hey, I've got a neighbor threatening to sue me. I would just go, I have a tree I'd like you to take a look at. Have them come and say, what's the best option here? They'll tell you if it's a dangerous tree. They'll tell you if it needs topped, trimmed, taken out, supported. What are your best options? They probably won't go up and do like a visual inspection for any kind of rot or anything like that. But when they tell you what their recommendation is, if it is something like this is a very dangerous tree, you need to take it out, they might have the experience to go on. Don't go on your neighbors. They're just doing what is in their best legal interest. When an arborist says, here's my recommendation, you might say, I'm getting 3 or 4 estimates on what I want to do, but really what I want is something in writing saying what you suggest to do. Because if you say, I'm looking at what to do, some arborists might think, what's the most profitable thing I can do to this tree? The least amount of work for the most amount of profit. So they're probably going to say, I can trim this up and make it look very aesthetically pleasing. And you're going to pay a bunch of money for some cuts that really don't do anything for the safety of the tree. If they say it needs to be topped because of the weight and the way it's leaning or anything like that, if they think someone else is going to do the work, they're actually only going to recommend the smallest amount for safety. So that's how I would handle a tree on my property that was a danger to the neighbors. That's how I would handle it if it was the neighbor's tree that was a danger to my property. I would send an email, because emails are admissible in court, and dinosaurs my age would say send a registered letter, but an email is just admissible, stating, here's a picture of the tree. I think this is a danger to my property. I need you to take care of it. So both sides, that's what I would do.
I concur. Anna K, good afternoon or good morning. Key, good morning. Good to have you guys here. Those are some lumberjack landlord legacies from the course. Good to have you guys. They're all ready to go and start crushing in the market. They got a good start.
I want to get you guys, sorry, Matt, I want to get you guys phone holders so you don't look like 16-year-old teenagers when you look to read the chat, because we have to point it out in the video, or people will leave comments of, why is Mike texting people during a video? It's so you can see the chat while we're in a Zoom of the YouTube that we are doing.
So this is for my contractors and everything else going on. And then I actually have a screen where I have double screen where I have us.
Okay, so we got to get one for Mike then.
Well, you can do it because you're the one hosting it. I mean, I guess I could actually have it up on a separate screen, but if I'm watching the Zoom, it's hard for me to watch the Zoom and the YouTube, so I just have it up on my phone.
It's okay. Mike, are you looking at surrounding towns outside of Gary, like Hammond, for better long-term tenants?
Always, 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 always. Yeah. So I look at all of Northwest Indiana, Lake County. So Hammond, East Chicago, Gary, Michigan City, Morelville, all those different cities right there. Griffith, some of them are more expensive, some of them are less expensive. Whiting, there's a lot of really good cities there. And some of them are going to be less expensive, like Gary. They're going to be like more rougher neighborhoods like East Chicago is. And some are going to be nice. Like I like Hammond. There's lots of places in Hammond that I think are nice neighborhoods. They look good. And you can get good deals in all of those cities. There's people who don't pay attention to the market who list. There's people who have to sell. They're forced sellers for whatever reason they list, and things pop up all the time that are good. So my property manager, if you draw a circle outside of Gary where she's located, she'll manage up to an hour away. So that gets me all the way to Michigan City. And I would look at all those markets.
Beautiful. Look up. Let's see. I saw, yeah, bingo. F these peeps makes my hackle goes up. Yeah. I mean, again, it's at the end of the day. What's really funny is I got asked in an interview with the paper something about slumlords, and I said, I want them out of the game. Like, they're just a fellow landlord. I go, they're not anything. Okay. So like, you liken what you do for the paper to Al Jazeera?
Tabloids.
Like, come on, like everything is not created equal. It's like, what value is somebody bringing, to the marketplace, and are they being truth tellers? Are they doing the right thing in the business that they're in? Everything would be a whole lot better if we just did our jobs and took care of what we were responsible for and stopped making it everybody else's fault. And so I don't want slumlords. I buy from slumlords a lot because they don't raise rents, or they do, and there's constant delayed maintenance. They don't know how to run a business. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So I like slumlords from that perspective. I want them out of the game. Samoan Island Curl, free A student units. I would like to sign up for one, please. I know there's a line forming behind my other tenant. So he's going to be there for a while. Rob, Mike, Dion's haircut is even more carefree.
This is pretty carefree. I don't have to do anything with it. It's like,
it is. Yep. I agree. Landlord Odyssey, another legacy from Lumberjack Landlord. We need more of this weekday live stream. Awesome stuff. Great to be here. We try. Dion is always willing. My schedule has sucked the last month, and Mike's has been bad for 6 weeks. And so it was good that we could finally get together and do this.
Spirit is willing, but the body is weak for me. Like, I'm always wanting to be here.
The schedule is weak. I mean, that's
right.
Brutal. Rob, rude. I don't do rude. Obnoxious, sure. Rude, no. So let me give you perspective, Rob. I believe that you're both. I believe you're obnoxious and you're rude. And I think obnoxious is fun, and rude, it's only rude to the person receiving the comment. I appreciate obnoxious because I identify as obnoxious.
I picture Rob
Yes.
as New York rude, not Seattle rude.
Okay, explain.
So Seattle rude is you see somebody with a flat tire and you go, oh, that sucks, man, that sucks. You have a flat tire. Good luck. New York rude is, oh, you idiot, you got a flat tire. All right, let's jack it up. Let's go. And then help you change it.
I like
That's
that.
kind of like Matt rude, honestly.
It really kind of
You can
is.
call that East Coast rude.
Exactly. East Coast rude. I think you can call that East Coast rude. It's true.
I'm going to laugh at you as I help you.
I have fixed a number of flat tires on the side of the road, helping people out when I'm like, I drive by and I'm like, if my daughter were on the side of the road and AAA hadn't come yet, I'd hope somebody would help her change her tire. Or mom, Ashley. Let's see. Simone Island Curl. The Indifferent One is the one with the power. That's 100%. Great book by a great President Trump. Pat Coleman. Hello, fellas. Hello, Pat Coleman. Jesse Thomas. He answered your question, Mike. He found us on ORAT. I'm getting ready to make my first seller finance proposal. I've taken the ORAT course, which touched on some strategy, but what other resources, samples would you guys point us to? Well, Mike would point you to his course, but it's still not out yet. Dion has something, you have something, Dion has seller finance stuff on his channel because we've all done seller finance deals.
So the resource I would point you to is I have a free course called the Binder Strategy, that strategy that gets my tenants to ask me to raise the rent. But in that course for free, I include two things. First is the spreadsheet where I include my income and expenses for my rental portfolio that was designed by me and my CPA. Second is I have a very pared down version of all of the benefits of seller financing for the seller and some of the benefits to the buyer. And what you do, so if you sign up for the course, which is free, you download the seller financing letter, then edit it to the deal. I've never just taken that letter and sent it to the seller. I take it and then I find out what I can from them, use map strategy of what matters to this seller, and then incorporate that with all of those bullet points in that seller finance letter.
Let me touch on seller financing real quick. Actually, I had this conversation with Zuber recently, and we were talking about numbers. It's a numbers game. You're going to throw out the idea of seller financing 100 times to get one taker. And it's going to feel like a waste until you actually get that taker. And then you're like, oh my God, this is the holy grail of real estate investing. This is fantastic. But so many people don't understand it. So many people aren't even in a position where they can do seller financing because they don't own the property outright or they don't have a huge equity position in it. So many people are going to have a real estate agent that's running interference for them. And the real estate agent doesn't understand it. And the real estate agent don't want to learn it. And so they'd rather just say, oh no, my client's not interested at all. Well, then later, and I've had this happen with the property right now. I called on this. It was $60,000 is what it was listed for probably 6-7 months ago. And I remember the pictures. I remember the listing. I call the listing agent. I'm like, hey, this is really expensive for a 2-bed, 1-bath house. But if they want their price, are they willing to do owner financing? Oh, no, they're not willing to do owner financing at all. Well, are you sure? Because it's already been listed for 60 days. And you want to call on these ones that haven't moved because now the agent at least is maybe going to be slightly more motivated to think of something outside of the box. Agents suck. I can't stand them. They're idiots. But, hey, their paycheck, usually the house is with them for like 90 days. Okay. She's like, oh, no, the seller's not interested at all. Well, the listing goes for another 6 months. She relists it multiple times, never sells at all. If Dion has us muted, can he hear us? Because I just want everybody to know that he has a phobia of spiders. And we cleared that space out in the bottom of his house. We went down in the basement. He was straight up afraid of spiders. Like he was like, we can't go any further because of these webs. I'm like, it's just webs, Dion, knock them down. Anyways, that's why Dion's a great guy. So back to the seller financing. So I call this real estate agent up and she, I heard us turn back on. Anyways, I call this real estate agent up and she's absolutely anti-seller financing. Well, she finally loses the listing 6 months later. Guess who picks it up? My boy, Angelo, one of the few good agents out there that I bought my triplex with. He's like, hey, dude, just got this listing that went expired a while ago. They're actually interested in seller financing. I'm like, you son of a gun agent running interference, not doing your job, not actually checking with your owner, your seller, if they're willing to entertain this offer. Well, now Angelo's like, yeah, man, they're open to seller financing. Why don't you send me some terms so we can talk about it? Well, Angelo understands seller financing. Here's another thing you need to do if you're interested in seller financing. You have to educate agents on it. Angelo did not understand it when I first met him. Like, he had heard the concept before, but after months of me sending him mock deals and mock terms and mock rates and things like that, and explaining the process to him and explaining how to run the numbers on a rental property and why I can't make an $800 payment to an owner when it's going to rent for $1,000, that doesn't work. Now he understands he can front load the conversation to people who are listing with him, and we can get stuff done. So yeah, seller financing is fantastic. There's a lot of things that you need to recognize about it if you're going to make it happen. Number one, it's just a pure numbers game. You're going to throw a lot of offers out there. Number two, people are going to work against you all the time. Number three, you have to educate a lot of people, owners and real estate agents, on the process. And number four, when you finally get that deal, you will realize why you've been working so hard and how it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, it's maybe 1 in 20 deals that you do on a typical asset, single family, dupe, tri, quad. Maybe 1 in 20 of those is even going to listen to you about seller financing. On the bigger stuff, the stuff that Cody and Christian multifamily go after, on the bigger stuff, those guys are always willing to listen to that deal because they're investors, they're business people. They don't worry if you stop paying. They come and get it. They have attorneys. So if people own those big assets, that's where seller financing, that's where it's easier to get a seller financing done in a big asset like that, is because they're business people. And they know that they have recourse, and they know that they don't want to take a big, huge profit if they've owned the building for 10 years, and you're paying them over market, and you're willing to give them, pretty close to market at rate. So all of those things, that's why multifamily strategy with Christian and Cody works well. The challenge is that, do you want those types of assets? Because they're very different to manage and maintain than a regular asset. RIS owners, hey guys, how do you guys run a credit check on an inherited tenant? First thing is, I wouldn't run a credit check on an inherited tenant. I wouldn't bother running a credit check on an inherited tenant. Dion?
I never have either. I was trying to keep my face neutral to see what you were going to say, but I didn't want to do that. Oh yeah, none of that. If
I was just
really
waiting to hear how
to,
it's wrong.
you can list your property on apartments.com, give them the link, have them fill out the application. You could do it that way. That way there's a charge of $45 to the applicant, not you. Making a tenant do that after you buy it, though, is kind of a violation of the lease. So you'd only want to do it if you were renewing a month-to-month lease or instituting a longer lease. I don't care what their credit score is when they're an inherited tenant. That's why, Josh, we don't do the binder strategy for at least 2 months. Those 2 months are how you vet the tenant. Do they pay on time? Do they get noise complaints? Do they call you for trivial things? So it's not just the credit score. So I've never run a credit report on an existing tenant. I want to see if that's true. I might have when I went to a 2-year lease with somebody after having them for a couple of years, but I hadn't before then.
Well, if you do the binder with them, right, and they were willing to pay that more money, you might want to check and make sure they can in fact pay that more money, because a lot of people are really bad at math, right? And especially with some of the increases that we've seen, if somebody's rent going from 13 to 1,800, because we went in, we did a roof, we did this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, now we up the value of the property, we up the class of the property. And from our perspective, it is, now that I know what market is on that type of an asset, I want to get close to that number as much as I can.
This is going to sound horrible, but here's why I like the binder strategy. Okay. I've had 13 to 1,800 rent increases after doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure.
Nothing. Like the tenant was like, yeah, that's totally fair for us, totally fair for you. It's a little bit below market. We just had that good of a deal before you bought the property. I mean, I did like coated locks, LED lights, but I didn't spend thousands of dollars on fixing anything.
Sure. Dan Caruso, assuming both applicants qualify, would you take a perfect couple with a 20K in the bank, 780 credit score, 5X rent, but want to buy a house soon, or average applicant that is more check to check, but still solid? Second one for me.
So 2 things. First, remove the word couple from the question. If you even have that in your vernacular when you're talking to people, that's a form of discrimination against single people, whatever the thing is, you can't look at this is a married couple, this is a single person. And so we have to make sure we're communicating that way at all times so that somebody can't come back months later and say, I didn't get the place because whatever protected class I am. So I would take that out of the equation. Are you looking at this applicant, which could be couple, singles, whatever, and they qualify, and this person who qualifies, but this person's looking for a house. So that's what I would look at.
Correct.
Big difference between Matt and I is I've never wanted to know how much a tenant made. Never cared.
True.
I do a higher credit score and no evictions ever, and I've never had a later missing rent payment. I do have a couple of tenants who ask every now and then, but so far have always been able to determine that paying the rent was important.
Yeah, the key is that if they're looking for a house, the issue is you have to make sure that you've got good language in your lease that makes sure that when they find the house, I mean, if you know they're shopping, like that's kind of a challenge, because then you should be going with a higher rent because it's a midterm rental, because they're eventually going to find a house. And if they do, what's the conversation going to be? Hey, we weren't expecting to find this one this fast, but we did. And so we know it's only been 4 months. And now it's the middle of winter time, but we're going to close on this house. That's what happens. A lot of houses come available in the winter time, and then those are sales that happen pretty quickly because there's no inventory. And that's what ends up happening is people that are shopping for a house, they'll still shop in the winter time. So what you're likely signing up for is maybe a few months of a lease. I wouldn't take the other, I mean, you still have to judge the tenant on the merits of their, situation. If the other guy is a 620, I don't want him, whether I have a 780 in the pack or not.
So one other thing to consider, and I've done this before too. I wasn't choosing between two tenants, but I had a tenant who wanted to buy a house. So my goal is to help my tenants get on the property ladder. So I've had conversations with all of them. I'll find an agent for you. I'll find a lender for you. This is how buying a duplex works. You could start this too, but I've only had one do it. I like to have at least 1-year leases, if not 2-year leases. In some places, you have to have the tenant's signature notarized if you do that. But I like 1 year because lenders like to see at least 3 months remaining on the majority of your leases. So if you have a tenant who's going to move in, who wants to buy a house, they might not want to sign a year lease. So what I did with my tenant is I said, okay, we're going to sign a year lease. Let me explain why. Lenders are more likely to work with me on my next purchase as long as I have leases in a place that are at least 3 months. So the year does that for me. So we're going to put in a $50 lease termination agreement. So when we find your house that you're going to buy, it's going to cost you $50 to break the lease. I still get the long lease that satisfies the lender's requirements. Tenant feels like they're really on a month-to-month lease to get out of whenever they find the place they're going to move into. So if you end up going with that tenant, that's a way to get a long lease and a tenant that can get out when they find their place. If you're looking for longevity, given that if everything was pretty much the same and I took the income out, I don't care if they live paycheck to paycheck. I know people making 6 figures who are late on every bill.
That's right.
So if the money isn't what determines that, credit score is what I would look at. So if both credit scores hit my metric, I would probably with Matt, pick the person who wasn't looking to buy a house. I'd probably offer to help the person looking to buy a house.
Maybe, Dan, maybe they're as quality as the tenant that just applied for one of my places with a 470 credit score. Apparently they can't read either because the ad says 650. Don't apply otherwise.
I feel bad when I see that they
470.
paid the application fee and obviously don't meet.
Well, I don't charge the application fee up front. That's why.
Well,
Like,
so I list on things like apartments and Zillow because
Yeah.
I use Hemley and it puts it on 30, right?
Yep.
So once it's put out there, people will apply
Yeah.
to get information and there's no way to stop them. You
Yeah.
can say don't apply until you've read the whole thing and make sure you qualify. But so far, I think apartments and Zillow and all those platforms make a lot of money on those application fees. The landlord's not making any money on those.
Well, and that's the issue. They do make a lot of money on those things. And, I've had tenants where they're just like, oh my word, like we've spent $750 in application fees in the last 6 months trying to get a place. And I'm looking at their numbers and I'm just like they're kind of borderline, but kind of not really. Like they're decent tenants, they're a 650 and a 685 or something like that. And like their income was just about 3x and they lived in their last place for 8 years. Like to me, that's a great tenant because it's like, that's the person that I'm in this to help. That's the person that I want to get a nice unit to.
A lot of landlords aren't looking for first qualified.
Yes.
They're
Correct.
looking for best qualified.
True story.
So you get the tenants like that would make a great applicant, but they were 3rd or 4th in line of who applied.
Yeah. Mike, any thoughts on this?
I'll play devil's advocate. I'll say that he should rent to the rich couple, and exclusively because I want him to discriminate. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. No, but let me say it like this. Let's say you say, okay, you know what? I don't want to rent to these folks because they might end up moving. And instead, I'm going to pick this person because I think he's going to stay longer. Well, Murphy gets a vote, and by luck, he's going to end up moving out anyways. You can't predict the future. You just can't predict the future. He could move out in 3 months. He could not pay. He could get to the other person who isn't looking to buy a house right now could go through a divorce and have to move. Meanwhile, your perfect couple might decide to just take a really nice vacation or blow some of that 20K, and they could end up staying as a 2 to 3 year tenant. So when it comes to like predicting the future, I don't know. Me personally, I'd rather just take the people who are the most qualified right now. And then I would explain to them, hey, look, you've got a year-long lease. If in the lease, if you need to break the lease, at least in my lease, if you need to break the lease, you have to keep paying the monthly rent until I get it released. So if you end up moving out in the middle of January, okay, that's on you, but you still owe me February and March and April until I get it released. And I'll make a good faith effort to get it released. I will. I'll do my best, but I'm not going to just, let you get out of here and leave me with 3 or 4 months in the middle of the wintertime. So for me personally, I don't see it as too big of a risk because it's going to involve some extra work for me to release it and possibly have to keep their security deposit if I got to turn the unit or something. But I would just make sure that I extra articulated that up front so that they know what the expectation is. And that's exactly what I did when I bought my house. I didn't even tell my landlord, but he said, hey, I get it. You're moving out. He owned a duplex. I was moving into a duplex. He said, in our lease, it says you got to pay till I get it released. And I said, no problem. I paid for an extra 6 weeks that I didn't live there, and he got it released. I didn't have any hard feelings towards him. I gave him a beautiful, clean property right back after only living in it for 5.5 months. And I was able to move into my duplex. So would I not rent to myself? No, I'd love to rent to myself. I've never been late on a bill in my entire life, and I definitely wouldn't do anybody dirty. So for me, it's just about setting up good expectations at the beginning, and then, take the most qualified person, in my opinion.
And Mike lives in Care Bear land. That's not reality, dude. Like, because here's the thing, you're going to grow. That's your reality now, right? But as someone who's got a 137 portfolio, here's what I'll tell you. That person you will have to sue them. You will then see that they can get a judgment where they can pay you $20 a month forever. And so the reality is, the fact is that if we lived in a perfect world, you're exactly right. My lease reads exactly the same way. You got to pay me. You got to pay me. You got to pay me until I rent it. That's the law. Mm-hmm. The reality is, on the practical application of that rule, GFL. Good.
So Mike is seeing this from our perspective because my situation was almost exactly the same. I bought my first duplex while I was living in an apartment. I had 3 months remaining on my lease. I said, look, I finally hit the point. I'm buying my first duplex. I'm going to move in and house hack, moved out. And in Washington, they have to list it. They have to be hunting for properties, but you pay until it's released, right? Well, magically, mine didn't get leased for those 3 months.
Sure.
Because they're just not going to do anything. So
of course,
me and Mike can get screwed by that. And we're like, we'll just pay because we signed a contract, an agreement that says this is what we'll do.
Yep.
So Mike is seeing it as that's what the average person would do, but that is not what the average person does.
Somebody with a 780 credit score and 20,000 in the bank is not average, in my opinion. I think that they're a little more likely to at least probably stand by their word. That's why they've got a 780 credit score. They make their payments.
Yeah, you know what?
Do they want that judgment on them to tank their credit score? Yeah, sure. They bought their house, but it still tank their credit score.
You know what they'll do? They'll come back and they'll do the rough justice. They'll come back and they'll say, because they got a 780 credit score, and here's what they'll do. They'll come back and they'll go, you know what? So we know we owe you this much. They also aren't stupid because they've got a 780 credit score. They know how things work a little bit, right? Because they know how things work a little bit, they'll come back and they'll go, you know what? So I know it's going to cost you $1,300 or $1,800 to sue me and drag me to the court. And it's a bunch of time you don't have. And I know what your schedule is because I know you're Captain America over there trying to save Seattle single-handedly. And you take every call that comes in. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar. And
Mike, remember, we started this live as a therapy session for Matt, who's dealing with a problem tenant. So coming from that space today, Matt's bitter.
Yeah, just more experienced. That's all. Just more. This is why I share my experiences, because I can tell you, I've been through it. I've then sued. I'm with you guys. I did the same thing when I was a renter. I got out of one of my places. I knew that I was going to pay, period, end of story. But I can tell you in the long list, because here's the thing, Mike, at 650, 680, maybe 780, but at 650, 680, or where you take your tenants and their credit scores and Gary, nope. You are going to be left holding the bag every time. I'd be willing to, I'd throw all my chips in the center of the table on that one. And again, it's just something to recognize because yeah, we have leases that should be bulletproof because the law should uphold them. And people should recognize when you sign a contract, you need to live up to your end of the deal. That's society fails when people stop doing what they agreed to do.
That might work in your stand your ground state, but here in Washington, a tenant lease has the same validity as a prenup.
Oh yeah, it's kind of useless. It's half anyway, right?
You use them as toilet paper.
Yeah, I figured it was. So practical. So, in the perfect world, yes. In reality, I've seen it. I've literally seen somebody that paid me for 3 months when something didn't rent because it was dead of winter. It was literally December, January, February. I was like, listen, I just want to be honest with you. The expectation I'm going to rent this in December or January is almost zero. Because, and we posted it like the whole 9 yards. And the other thing too is, what about the bill that I had, if I'm not the self manager, right? And I'm not showing the unit and I got to pay somebody to fill it. If I got to pay somebody, that should be something that they pay. Again, it's just good luck getting that out of them. Craig Cruz, the Orat tree is the absolute best. I agree. Ned talks. Sup guys? Ned, another Lumberjack Landlord course, alumni. Samoan Island Curl. Love these chats, y'all. Thank you. Very much appreciate it. We love it too. REI Stoner. It's the only way we can really get time to hang out. REI Stoners. After my lawyer draws up a lease, should I present it in paper form to sign, online, or both? Okay.
Bro.
I'm kind of angry about this one.
Me too.
Because this is in my course, but I also say it all the time on my free stuff. You are in a state where you know other investors. Why are
You've met us in person?
Why are you paying an attorney for a lease?
Come over and done videos on the slides.
Right.
Dude, no, this is the community, my man. This is the community. You reach out to D, you reach out to Mike.
So let's answer the question. When we realize that Josh can get a lease from us, how would you recommend it, online or in person, on paper?
Yeah, get a lease from one of these guys, number one. Number two is I like to present through DocuSign. That's just me, because people can literally read everything on their phone and they literally just have to tap and they're done. And some of my favorite ones are I send the lease over and in 90 seconds they tap and I'm like, it's 8 pages. You didn't read the whole thing. Like, but I like to send it over via DocuSign. I don't like to, everything that we do is automated. When you have 137 units, you have to automate as much as you possibly can if you're going to do all the work. And so we have a very distinct process that we show in our course and we build out the entire process, but here's the abridged version. Potential tenant sees the place, they like the place, they then get, and if their numbers are strong, then we do the background and that sort of stuff. That gets approved within 24 hours, typically. Like it's almost instantaneous that we get that information back in a lot of cases. When we get that information back, okay, check that box, done. We then email them the lease because it was part of their app. We email them the lease. We send them a text saying, congratulations. We'd love to have you as a tenant. We just sent over the lease. Let me know if that's all set. They sign that lease. And then I say, I need to get the deposit via Venmo or PayPal or some way, or check or cash. I need to get the deposit. Once I get the deposit, I will countersign the lease. That way I'm not tied to them if they drag their feet on paying the notice. That is the process that I've done for years, and it works really, really well because people want to know that they have a house or a home, and this is the way to do it. Dion?
I'm not going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to explain that there's different positions to be in. You have 137 units. You've been doing this for over 20 years.
Yes.
You are financially free, and you can have, I want to say 20 to 30 nightmare tenants, and you would still be like, yeah, real estate's still worth it. I just found a bunch of cards all at once.
Yeah.
You're brand new, Josh. This is your first house hack. With now 18 units, I still don't have a DocuSign account. I've signed 1,000 things on DocuSign for other people, but I don't have an account. I'm not going to pay for anything like that. But you're at the point where you're so new that if you had one bad tenant, that's 100% of your tenants. And you might get disheartened to step back and say, okay, I can't do this. It's not for me. That's what happened to me my first year. It was that bad. Tried to quit, couldn't give the house away. So got lucky. But here's what we could do for you. I would do the lease in physical presence of the person, not over Zoom or anything. Have the paperwork there, have them sign, have them initial each page, have them sign anything that's important to you that you want to make sure that they're aware of. See how that interaction goes. You're still vetting to the point where, as Matt said, once they've signed and you still want to sign them, then you can sign. And maybe don't do this. This was something I was comfortable with, being, Marine vet and working in law enforcement and having what I believe to be good situational awareness. I would like to meet tenants at their current residence to see how they treat the place they're moving out of, to see how they're going to treat mine. Don't do that if you're going by yourself. Meet somewhere public. Look at the car. What kind of car are they driving? This is the first tenant you're vetting. It's like when you go for a job interview, you're making a macroscopic decision on a microscopic amount of time. You have this little window to think of, is this the person I want to live next to? Is this the person I want as a tenant, as one of my first tenants? How are our interactions? How do they communicate? Do I have to fight every point? Do they question everything on the lease? Can you back out before you put your signature on it and say, you know what, this isn't going to be a fit? So DocuSign doesn't give you the chance to do that. When you have 30, 40 units, or when you're doing across states like Mike, or using a property manager, DocuSign probably becomes a thing. But you're brand new, first tenant, house hacking. I would put the extra time and energy into meeting in person and doing it on paper as a part of the vetting process.
Sure. Can absolutely be that. I don't disagree at all. I think that the DocuSign thing becomes even more of a thing, digital record. But also the other big thing too is that when you're remote, when you're remote, and it's like, for me, I've put units under, on lease, being 2,000 miles away. And so DocuSign lets me do that and lets me manage that process. And so if it's not something that, it's definitely something you can grow into, but it depends on the business that you're running for sure. Mike, thoughts?
I kind of have exactly the same take as Dion. You have 137 rental units. It's not feasible. It's not possible for you. Even you and
Sure.
Ashley were splitting them. It's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
My units at a distance, my property manager handles all of it. I don't know if she meets them in person. I know when it's Section 8, she has to meet them in person at Section 8 with the actual administrator.
Sure.
But I don't know if she's meeting in person or using some sort of electronic form. When I lease out the other side of my house hack, my duplex, I've done it in person with everybody. As a police officer, I've read people their Miranda warnings many times. I've read people their implied consent warnings for breath when they get arrested for DUI many times. I'm no stranger to reading through complex legal documents. And I like to sit there and shake my head, nod, and watch them put their signature down. And if a conversation ever comes about it later, i.e. in my vocation, when I go to court, no, I did read that and they did sign it. Yep, and there's the security footage of them signing it, even though they're saying that I didn't read it to them. There I am reading it to them. So I just like that extra step of, if I have a discussion over the lease at any point, I can sit down and say, we read over this together right here. And that's just a peace of mind for me, maybe, but I understand why it's not feasible for Matt to do that. So, but I think in Josh's case, hey man, this is a learning point for you and an experience that you need to have. Do it in person.
Yep.
You need to learn to interact with tenants. That's part of being a landlord. You need to learn to have tough conversations. You need to learn to have complex conversations. Take a question and answer a question professionally, or skills you need to build. Here's your opportunity.
Yes. Bill O'Connell, do you think that most slumlords have good intentions when they are not raising rent, but the end result is rundown property and tenant not living in reality of the market conditions? I don't think that they have good intentions. I think that they're just lazy. And that they realize that they don't really take care of the property. And so as long as that tenant's going to stay, they can just let them essentially live in that squalor until they've finally had too much and they finally give up. I mean, I bought a building that was run by a pretty horrible landlord, one that actually has a horrible reputation in our area. I got a thank you email from the town when they found out that I bought it, because it was registered. It went to the registry of deeds there and they got a copy. And we've got 4 out of the 5 tenants out of the building. and they were horrible tenants, leaving trash outside and, driving home, getting home drunk and literally leaving the car like halfway in the road. Like all these just like horrible things that made the street look disgusting. And now we've got 4 out of the 5 tenants out of there because one of the tenants, yep, you guessed it, one of the tenants is actually pretty good. They're actually really good, but the other 4 were awful. Like I couldn't wait to get them out. So I think that often I think that slumlords do things because the profitability is there. But what ends up happening is that when they go to then raise the rent, they realize that they can't. And then they realize that they're a little bit screwed because they've had 5 years of bill increases. They're not making enough money on the asset anymore. And now they have to sell. I buy properties like that all the time. Dion?
I think, Bill, you have 2 piles of people. I think you have slumlords with whether the rent's doubled or tripled, they're not going to take care of the property. They're looking for money with the least amount of effort. And that means they don't want to have the conversation to raise the rent. They don't want to have the conversation to fix anything. So they're going to be a slumlord no matter what. And then you have people with good intentions who buy a property and they're in that Choose FI Facebook group of mostly stock investors and people who are afraid of real estate, where you get really bad advice where people say, don't raise the rents, you're going to lose a good tenant. Well, if you don't raise the rents, you're going to lose a good asset, because you have those people with good intentions who don't raise the rent. And as Matt pointed out, over years, you have these cost increases that you can't keep up with. And so in both of those cases, they end up selling to people like us who end up taking care of the properties, fixing things up, using something like the binder strategy, whether it's through email or in person, to get the rents where we need to make it a profitable business to actually fix things. But you have both the slumlord that's on purpose and the slumlord that had good intentions, but doesn't now have the money to upkeep the property.
Agreed. Mike, anything to add?
I'm not going to make excuses for slumlords. I think that that's a bit of a joke. And I think they should be jailed. There should be serious fines when you allow people to freeze in the middle of winter, or you're not repairing the air conditioners, or you're, allowing them to live with rats in the house if it's your fault and not the tenant's fault. Because a lot of times when it's the tenant's fault. Yep. I've read through many Facebook pages and Facebook groups and Bigger Pockets, and you see somebody post, the refrigerator in my unit that's been there for 20 years just broke. Should I charge the tenant for a new refrigerator? No, that's something that you provided, just like the air conditioning units Matt's been providing, and he needs to do the just kidding, Matt, but you need to do the responsible things. And when you provide something, you don't try to just like shift it off to the tenant just because it's inconveniencing you to have to pay for something you don't want to pay for. That makes you a terrible landlord. You're supposed to be setting money aside for vacancies and for maintenance on the property. And if you're not doing that, you suck, and the tenant should not have to wait a day or 3 days for a new refrigerator because you suck at your job. That's unacceptable for them and could get you into legal trouble.
Yeah, I mean, we've got over a 90% renewal rate on our units, and that's one that we're pretty happy about for units where we place the tenant. The inherited tenants, no, it's not anywhere near that, because quite frankly, they don't meet the standard. Whether it's paying the right rent or communicating about an issue, or, we just had somebody literally called us and said, I've got mold in my apartment. You can't tell me whether or not it's mold. You don't have a license. Can't tell me whether or not it's mold. You don't know. And then we looked at it and we're like, the toilet's been dripping for at least weeks. There's no way this happened overnight. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I was meaning to reach out to you. Okay, so then all of this is 100% self-inflicted. Now, I'm still going to do the work. I'm still going to pay for it. I still have to do it, but I'm excited about renewing her lease again. No, all she had to do was text me and say that there was a problem. She's had problems in the unit before. We've fixed those problems. And in fact, now that I mentioned this, she was the one on my Instagram that sink wouldn't drain. Go check out the picture on my Instagram at Lumberjack Landlord. It was full of 20 Q-tips in her sink.
Oh,
hey, listen, can't fix stupid. I don't know who didn't teach you that you can't stick Q-tips down a sink, and that's why it drains slow. But this is the kind of stuff where, again, sadly, this is maintenance that happens. Sometimes it's self-inflicted, sometimes it's not. For that slow sink, she absolutely got a bill. She got a bill for that work having to be done because it was completely self-inflicted. The ceiling one, yeah, it was my toilet that leaked. She didn't report it. It cost more money. So that's just something that would make me say, now I'm just not going to renew your lease. Chandra, what all routine preventative maintenance do you what do you do annually on your rental property to keep it in tip-top shape throughout the year? Chandra, I have a course. That is a big, long question. We have 3 modules of the course, about 2.5 hours that we cover. That's everything property management, property maintenance, the things you need to do, look at, keep an eye on. It's all of that stuff. But I'll let Dion answer that question. But that's my answer, is it's all in my course, because it's literally, for me, it'd be a 2-hour answer.
Chenda, what I do is I address anything that is safety related. Right. So about once a year, either me or a handyman is going to go and either repair something or swap out an air filter or have a reason to be there, lease renewal, anything with a banister, any carpet on stairs. I'm trying to think of what other safety things. I'm going this weekend, me personally, I'm breaking my lazy thing and I'm fixing a deck because I had a tenant reach out and say, this deck is rotted and falling apart. And I was like, all right, call my handyman. This is a deck. You got to go over there and fix it. And he's like, all right, be there. Let the tenant know when they'll be there. I drove by the property to drop something off to a tenant for something else. And I look at the deck. There's a board that is unscrewed.
Ooh.
On the whole thing. So cancel the handyman thing. I'm going to go and put it 4 screws, 6, 2, 4, 6,
probably 8
screws in,
yeah.
and have a Dion talk with the tenant.
Love it. So success is a journey. Hello, gentlemen. Have been away for preparing for our first baby. Congratulations, Jerneal.
Oh, congrats.
But have still been around in the background doing the work. Happy Friday, and thanks for all you do. Happy to do it, Jerneal.
So this means, hang on, wait, I went through the math. We met Jerneal at
November.
I think that means you were basically celebrating
a
ORAD event.
Could be.
Yeah, that's what happened. You got to name your child Dion.
Zuber. We want a kid named Zuber.
Yes. Rob, New York Rude, guilty. Good. REI Stoners, what would you do if the seller doesn't present a checkout list for the units? How does that affect paying deposits back to tenants? Mike.
Unfortunately, as much as you'd like, what'd you say?
All the time, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all the time. They don't even have the record that they did when the tenant moved in.
Right.
Like, forget about what it was that day. But they don't even
have a record called an inspection report.
Yes.
So what you do is you document from this date
Correct.
forward.
Absolutely.
Anything new that wasn't there in the inspection report.
That's right.
In the photos of the inspection report.
That's right. Yep. I just literally had that conversation last night with an investor. Just had the same exact. He's like, well, she's lived there for 5 years. I go, but you've owned it for 2. He goes, right. So what am I going to do? I go, all the pictures that you got in your inspection report, they're all there. If there was extra holes in the wall or ripped up carpet or any of that stuff, you can catch any of that stuff. That actually, an inspection report actually helped me partially win a court case, because the guy said the place has never had smoke detectors. I had the inspection report where all 3 of them were in the pictures.
And this is REI Stoners asking. I know the agent he's working with, and we talked a couple of times, so I know there's an inspection report. So any damage that's there in the inspection report, it's pretty much something you're going to have to fix.
Yep.
Even if you know in your mind that tenant did that tenant's deposit doesn't generally pay for that, unless the tenant tells you, I broke that.
Yeah.
To steal out of law enforcement terminology, consent is golden.
Yeah.
Mike, you must deal with this a decent amount, but you're rehabbing a lot of your properties when you buy them, like I do. So we get them and we rehab them, and so it kind of doesn't matter because we're getting them either tenant free or we're inheriting a tenant, and we know that, hey, as soon as that person leaves, I'm going to gut the place anyway. So I don't get tenants like that. So if I know that I'm gutting the place when they leave, I don't keep their deposit. I'm just like, I was planning on doing this. The only time that I do is if they do something in like a common area, something like that, or something that they bend or break or whatever when they leave that I was planning on keeping, like a fridge or something like that. But go ahead.
No, I mean, I literally was just gonna say the exact same thing. It's
Good.
you're buying the house, you don't have their move-in inspection report from when they moved in and did the walkthrough through the unit. So it's unfair to hold them to a standard that you can't 100% say for certain and articulate, especially not in the legal situation, that you know for a fact they created that problem or caused that damage. And so just like Dion said, you have an inspection report, or I just do the walkthrough when I meet the tenant, when I take over the property, like I did here. I walk through, documented, took pictures and photos. If there'd been anything outstanding after they moved out later, then I would have held them accountable for that moving forward. But I wouldn't feel good personally saying you broke this when I didn't lease it to them. I don't know.
Yeah. Mark Ham, hello. Ninja Vanish, good morning. Landlord Odyssey, Matt, it looks like most of your problems lately are coming from housing tenants. Will that change anything for you in the future? That's a great question. It's changed the housing authorities I'll work with. Number one, that's already changed. When this new inspector came in, he's completely inept. He's out of his depth, and he has a lot of life lessons he needs to learn before I would ever consider renting to that housing authority again. So yeah, definitely. I think that, I don't want to I get why housing in Section 8 has a bad rap. I totally get it, because a higher percentage, based on factual numbers in my study and my business, a higher percentage of those tenants are more difficult. That being said, I have plenty of great tenants that are housing in Section 8 tenants. I do. I have plenty of them that are they're fantastic. They're not a problem. They're not an issue. That being said, the numbers remain true. They are about 17% of my portfolio right now. They are still in the 75 to 80% range of calls and texts. Those are just the numbers. Those are the facts. There's, no sugarcoating it. That's just the raw data. But I wouldn't stop renting them, but I have changed based on what Dion, his experience was, what my experience has been. Mike and I have talked about it as well. Millennial Mike and I have talked about it as well. I used to look at all housing tenants as equal, and they aren't. It's just like a market tenant.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
The issues you're having with these tenants, are these tenants that you screened and put in place, or purchased a property that had Section 8 in place?
So the two tenants that I had, or the two really bad Section 8 tenants that I had, they were both, let's see, one of them, she was actually an ERAP tenant, Emergency Rental Assistance Program tenant.
So that's not housing authority.
But then she got a
Nightmare.
voucher. And I let her stay.
So,
And I let her
so here's my criteria
Yeah.
when it comes to Section 8.
Yep.
700 credit score.
Yeah.
Period. End of story.
So
And I'll look at credit history. So they can have a 750, but if I
Yep.
look at credit history and it's got issues, that could be a deal breaker.
So it's really interesting. So to that point, Dion, because you have that and that is your standard, I've reviewed almost 200 housing applications, 200 to get 17% of my portfolio to Section 8.
I think that's a fair number, because you get 30 to 50 applicants per unit.
Yeah, even more
All
than
of those
that.
are Section
Yeah.
8. You get
A
more
lot.
than that, right? So you're filtering through that many
Hundreds.
non-voucher tenants that you're like, nope. Section 8's the same way. I'll get like 30.
Yeah.
When I was using apartments, I probably got more the last two, but when I was just using apartments, I would get about 30.
Yep.
Some of them would be Section 8, some of them would not. And it ends up being about the ratio I want to keep.
We
1/3 of the tenants who don't suck are Section 8, but 28 of 30, whether they're Section 8 or not, don't meet the qualifications.
Well, yeah. And so so again, that's one of the things I changed in my evaluation process. So it was in working with the housing authority, stopped working with one of them. The second one was absolutely how to evaluate those. That was one of the big things that was a big difference for me, was in those 200 applications, only 2 of them had over a 700 credit score, 1 in 100.
That's about my numbers too. It's pretty small.
Yeah, it's really small. And so if you
those are
want
the
to
ones
make,
I get.
right. Right. And if you want to make that like a bigger percentage of your portfolio, so you're actually getting to a third and then you have a portfolio of size, what happens? I have to reduce the quality metric, right? If I want it to be a certain level of size, because if
I don't know, because Mike says the same thing. Mike says if they're in my area and they have a high credit score, they're going to buy.
Say again.
Mike says if they're in Gary, Indiana, and they have a high credit score, they're just going to buy a house. Well, there are people on Section 8 that have 800 credit scores all across the country. It's fixed income, not low income.
Yep.
So Mike's difference is Millennial Mike is trying to do all Section 8. So he needs a bunch of qualified people to find the ones that work. If he had market and a couple that were Section 8 and he could filter through the same on each side, I would say even in a place where most people have a low credit score, I would still look at credit score as the metric. I still
agree that credit score is metric. I think the other thing too is like, so I asked how many vouchers my places have. I'd be willing to bet you that you guys have thousands of vouchers in your housing authorities. We don't.
Both of ours are closed. You can't even apply for it.
Yeah.
There's so many
at capacity, right?
Right. So, so my guess is though, right? Because you have people that are in the housing authority that they want, or in the housing, they want to move. They want a different unit. They had another baby, they had another 3 babies, whatever. So you have people that want to move. They want that upward mobility. And so I think on my side, so the reason why that 200 is alarming is because one of the towns I work with only has 300 vouchers, 314 vouchers.
Ouch.
So if I'm seeing that many people, and the other crazy thing too is that, I pay my agent by the hour to get through this stuff. We say it right there in the ad, don't even bother applying unless your credit score is X. And they still apply. And then we're like, okay, what is your credit score? And then they send us and we're like, we're not continuing this conversation until we get a copy of Credit Karma from you. And then it's 470. I just got one that's 470. Like, you're alert. You might go into anaphylactic shock if you pay a bill based on a 470. Like you're clearly allergic to paying your bills. So I agree with you because I don't mind that people live paycheck to paycheck. I live paycheck to paycheck, but I still had a 750 credit score. When you get up into the 800s, that's because you have good income and you have good credit and you pay on time, right? At that point, your DTI is markedly low. That's when you get into the 800s.
I actually was under the impression with credit scores that your income is not a factor.
It is based on your DTI.
The Grand Union has no idea where I work or what I do for income.
Well, of course they do.
No, they don't. There's no reporting on your income on credit scores. Hey, I don't teach credit score stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about. Mine hovers at like an 805. So if I had an 850, I'd be teaching that. But mine was the same at $17 an hour as it was at 200,000 a year versus not having a W-2 at all right now.
Sure.
So
it is payment history. It's also
history.
Yep. Credit
utilization.
Yep. Absolutely. On time.
Right.
Basically
length of credit.
Correct. Yep.
But in none of the metrics is
what's
your income and how much is it?
In TransUnion, that's something that actually you can show and it gives you your scores back of how you can improve them and tweak them. So agreed, it's not part of the current credit score that people get.
I was actually asking because I didn't know. And I was like, hang on, wait, am I completely wrong in how I think this works?
Nope. So if you look at TransUnion, it's one of those things where you can actually do an account figure and actually tweak it up and tweak it down and say, hey, if I pay this one off versus this one, but a lot of it is really based on that debt utilization piece.
Yeah.
Right. And that debt utilization, it doesn't impact, you're 100% correct. I meant to say debt utilization, not DTI. So debt utilization.
All right. That scared me for a second. I thought.
Yeah. Debt utilization, 100% correct. But that's where I look at it and I'm just like, man, a 470. Like
you have to work to get
you're allergic.
It takes as much effort to get it there as it does to get that 700.
100%. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Not DTI, debt to income. No, not DTI, debt utilization.
Yeah.
Just DU, not DTI. So yes, correct. So landlord honesty, I probably will. I've already changed one. I won't work with anymore. And if that inspector starts doing stuff for other towns, I won't work with them anymore either because he's that bad at his job. And I've professionally let the housing authority know how bad at his job he is. And then I've asked other housing authorities, hey, do you know of anything of this inspector? They're like, yes, we don't let him inspect our properties. Perfect. We can still work together. Landlord Odyssey. I was contacted by the government Army for my 5-2. Love it. It's a program that pays market rents, including utilities for current service members. It has to be the government's lease though. Thoughts? Mine is a government lease. I'm probably okay with that. My guess is it's really probably full of, if they deploy, then, your SOL. That's usually the biggest difference. Dion?
Well, so normally this situation here where it's a government lease for service members like that, it's not a specific service member. It's a billet.
Okay.
The person doing this role gets this housing.
Yep.
So the length of the lease, if it's with the government, the person can get orders. Your lease is still with the government.
Yep.
It's generally going to be midterm, and Tony Sags, Captain Sags, Sagas Tanag, I can never say your name right, Sony, I'm sorry. He's in the Tacoma FI group. He actually coordinates the meetings for us here. He has a video on my channel where he talks about how to compare midterm rentals to short-term rentals. And a lot of what he did in the military, and I think he still does, is you get stationed at different places, and the military leases the place, but it's generally not going to be for a year or 2 years. Often it's going to be 6 months, 9 months, however long the current billet, the role for that billet is going to be.
Yeah, love that. REI Stoners, our PM said we need to pay 2 months rent in order to get out of our lease. Yeah. So there can be a buyout. There can be all sorts of that stuff. And what you can do too is there's actually a state document in every single state where you can actually make the agreement on that document and then file it with the court. That way it's now, it's still it can still be binding, but if you then file it with the court, then there's record of that, which is always a nice thing. If somebody wants to go that route. Look up Care Bear Land, bust my gut. Yeah, we're friends. Financial firefighter, aloha from Hawaii. Hello, Mark. Vic Grillo. I think this thought process can, not that it will, put renters at landlords at risk. I know that was from a long time ago, but yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're just here sharing our story. This is the way it is for us landlording day to day. We're not interpreting graphs. We're not giving you feelings. We're sharing with you practical, applicable, top of mind knowledge and what we're experiencing on a daily basis. Look up, do I charge more renting to a landscape company, trucks, trailers, equipment, use? Yeah, for sure. I would. I actually charge. So I have a landscaping company that rents from me. They have a bunch of, now the relationship's grown to I think 6 or 7 units, but they have all those things, dump trailers. They've got dump trucks. They've got dualies. They've got machines, tractors that they'll bring. What the only thing that I do that's really different is I recognize that unit's going to be dirtier. I recognize that they're going to need to clean that when they leave. They've ruined carpet on me in literally 1 season, and I sent the company the bill. But the water sewer for me is the biggest issue because they will stack it up with 8 guys or 10 guys. That's the biggest issue that I see, is that they'll put 8 or 10 guys in there, whether they're doing H1Bs or something like that. That's one thing that I would keep an eye on. Mike, any thoughts there?
For the military, or are we talking?
Landscaping.
Oh, the landscaping. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be more wear and tear on the grass of your property because they're going to put your stuff inevitably on the grass. So, I mean, just be aware of that.
Would you put something in there that basically just points that out, knowing because they're going to leave all their traffic and all their stuff, equipment there, that you just expect that, that they would, because what I do also is I make them maintain that area.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, we had a landscaper apply for Marina's unit, and we weren't going to charge him anything extra or anything like that. But I mean, I think you just need to be aware. It's probably property specific too, if there's better parking versus not better parking, but there's probably just going to be more wear and tear. They're not going to take as good a care of it as you want.
Yeah.
So if you're renting to a landscaper, is it a person who works for a landscaping business, or is it the landscaping business where they are going to store all their trailers? That's the first thing to determine. If they're going to store all their stuff there, you're really making a commercial lease, even though it's a residence. So with a commercial lease, I like to do longer, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then put rent increases incrementally at the 2-year and the 4-year mark. This is what's going to happen to rents, plan it all out. So you have a couple of options there that you don't generally have with a residential lease. You're going to want the clause that's included in there that I've had on every lease I ever did for the truck driving school, which is when you leave, you have to leave it in the state it was when you moved in. That includes the exterior. So especially a landscaping company, they're going to know how to fix your grass when they leave.
Exactly.
That'll be the things I put in the lease before I let them park anywhere there.
Absolutely.
Find out if you're sewer or septic, where are your lines? If you're septic, where's your tank? Make sure they're aware, have clearly delineated areas where they can't put equipment. Those are the things I would consider with a landscaping company or any kind of company that's going to have equipment there.
Agreed. Vic Grillo, everyone pays until they can't, but it's part of the business. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is, for me, I recognize that it hurts less for me. It's still money out of my pocket, but it hurts less because it's the percentage of the revenue. You know, if you have $1,500 coming out of 10,000 or $1,500 coming out of 50,000, I don't like losing money any more than the next guy, but it's a lot easier for me to take the hit than it is for somebody that's a fifth the size type of thing. Rob, it's not rude. It's New York rude. Appreciate that, Rob. Jordan Harmon, live streams with all three of you guys are the best. I can't disagree with that. I agree. Laura Samaniego, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Look up, got to hit the like button. Yeah, that'd be nice. Julie Anderson, I wish I could watch that Dion Tenant talk. Yeah, don't we all?
Live stream it. Don't be a punk.
I don't want to live stream with these tenants because
it could be a Chandler David Smith moment.
Well, that would be fine because no news is bad news and a viral video would be great, but they watch the content.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't want them going, oh, we're being corrected. They're going to see that here.
Yeah. Dan Crusoe, great answers. Great discussion. You're welcome, Dan. Amafid, 48% likes to watch ratio. I appreciate that, Amafid, and I blame myself. Rob, Q-tips are filtering the water so she doesn't damage the environment. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I think one of those Q-tips might've gone too far into her ear canal. Millennial Mike, 700 credit score for Section 8 tenant. Privilege is invisible to those who have it.
Those who have it.
Those who, yeah. Gary, tenants have thought credit scores stop at 600. Yeah. And that's the thing is it really, I mean, that's one of the things, Mike, you and I talked a lot about, right? Was like,
list a property, Mike, with a 700 credit score requirement and see who you get. When you list a 600 requirement, you're going to get 600 applicants. You're not going to get 700 applicants.
I think he listed one with 7. I want to say, Mike, didn't we talk about it? Didn't you look at like, this is a technical term, shitload of applications? And like no one is fogging a mirror over 620.
No, but he didn't have the requirement for 700. Okay. And he had one property manager.
Do that, Mike.
Somebody here with that credit score is going to rent, they're going to buy.
I've had multiple property managers tell me that in the Gary area. I've talked to many of them.
They'll tell you that here in Washington too.
You might be right about that. I've never talked to one out here. Yeah, for kicks and giggles, maybe on my triplex, I can at least post one of the units. In fact, I might have to post a unit, not Section 8, because it's on the 3rd floor of a triplex and there's not 2 ways to get in and out of the unit, which means that it won't pass Section 8 inspection because they have to have 2 points of entry.
No, put in a ladder escape at a window.
Yes, it's 2 points of egress and you could just do a crank open window.
It's $30. We put one into place, $30.
I agree with you guys on the ladder technique, and we've tried to get that approved. Yeah. The city, for some reason, is giving us heartburn over that. My property manager has tried the ladder technique. It may get passed, it may not. If it doesn't, I can't go Section 8. When I list it for rent, go ahead.
What do they have in? Because that's not the only three-story multi with a Section 8 tenant in Gary, Indiana. So what do the other ones have? They just have the 2 points of egress.
So yes, they all have to have 2 points of egress. And I've been in, I can't remember which city, but I've been in a city before where they would allow you to build a miniature landing that would just allow you to step onto the landing. Say that to you. It doesn't even have to go down. They just stand there and fire.
Correct. Correct.
And I brought that up to my property manager and he did not let me know whether or not he's brought up that solution before, but I don't remember seeing those in Gary. But
here's how you get that approved. You call the lieutenant at the fire station.
Okay.
Not the chief, the lieutenant. You call the lieutenant at the fire station and you say, what is your local fire code for safety for people needing to get out of a unit? And they will often tell you that is the solution. Cause I have one of the towns that I had to put one of those stupid things on the front of the building. What's really funny, I had to fight with the historical district. I said, you guys finish fighting it out and you let me know who wins. Historical district didn't want it on the house. The fire company did want it, the company, whatever number they are, but literally that's what it was.
Mhm.
So call the lieutenant and ask him, what is, if I don't have a second means of egress, what is acceptable to you to meet fire code? Because
Right.
if that lieutenant sends you an email to what fire code is, then housing likely will accept it.
That's a good point. I'll give it a shot.
I would try that. Let's see. Steven, hey, glad to see Mike is alive. Yeah, me too. Mike Newton's changing out his batteries. Good morning, fellas. Nick W. Was Mike shot at this week? I don't know. We don't usually ask, Rob. We wait for you to ask. Invest to wealth. Howdy. Steven, LOL Rob. Andy Borch, what credit score would raise red flags for you? Dion's anything below 700, right?
So what matters to me with credit score? Well, there's two things. First, you want to be consistent, right? You want to have a number across the board, whether they're Section 8 or non-Section 8, you want to be using the same credit score. You have to screen the same. And then second, you look at credit history. Credit history to me is as important as score. I've never really cared about credit scores of tenants when I buy a property, if they're already there. It's when I'm placing a tenant that I look at credit scores. Since I don't look at income at all, never asked or cared, I go with a 700 credit score, and I've had good luck with that. If I looked at income, I'd have another metric. I might lower my credit score a little, 680, 660, what you guys are doing, and say, based on these three things, no evictions ever, this credit score and this income, which I don't like to do income because you eliminate a lot of tenants like waiter, cosmetologist, bartender, people who make the majority of their income from tips.
Yeah.
Who tend to make really good tenants.
Yeah. Laura Samaniego, I saw Matt's picture on Instagram. Disgusting. It was so gross. So freaking gross. Yeah. In fact, the maintenance guy that I sent over there, he was just like, he was calling me back and he was like, I'm like, don't do it on the phone. I want to hear it. I'm a sympathetic vomiter. Joshua Belby, just bought the course last week, Matt. Hey, Joshua. Yes, I recognize your name. Close on our first house hack on the 28th. I love it. After 1.5 years of searching, now the journey begins. Thank you for helping us stay motivated along the way. Oh, it's truly my pleasure. I'm so excited to have you in the course. Hopefully it's valuable. Let me know your favorite part if you've already started to get through it. What's really funny is I continue to ask that question, and it's almost always 2 or 3 modules, and it's almost always a different mix. So I love asking the question. Nicole Weigel, when buying a duplex and living in on one side, do you run your numbers with when you move out, it'll cash flow, or do you run it that it cash flows and you're just one of the tenants? When I run my numbers with 5% down going conventional, it's like a 12% yield. Dion, you have a great answer for this.
So I've done this video a couple of times, and I'm going to keep it as abbreviated as possible. So less than 2 minutes. When we run the numbers on a house hack, here's what I do, because I'm not trying to figure out how much I'm going to make. I'm trying to compare properties as close to similar as possible, apples to apples, whether it was a house hack or an investment purchase. So the first thing I do is take me out of the house hack. So you are right. I run it as though it was after I had moved out and all rent units were rented. And the second thing I do, because it's very easy to show a large return on a small down payment. If you buy a property with a VA loan that's 0 down, you might get an infinite return if you make $1 a year. Is $1 a year worth the risk and effort of managing a tenant? So I run the numbers as though I did a 20% down payment to try to compare it to what investment in purchases in that area would be. What does the yield look like when you do 20%? Based on where the yield is in your market, I've seen numbers where that can increase the yield or decrease the yield. So you have to look at that. That's what I do. I take out me living there and I do the down payment as though it was 20%. That way, again, you're not trying to figure out how much you're going to make. You're trying to look at 5 different properties. If they were all investment purchases, which is the one you would pursue? If you're including house hacking, really what you do is you take that out of the metric.
Mike, anything to add to that?
I go by a different metric for house hacking, living in a very expensive area here. I say, how much money can you save each month in rent? I was paying $2,000 a month in rent to not own anything and not have any equity being built and not be on the property ladder. $2,000 a month in rent. When I bought the property that I'm in right now, after all expenses, bringing in rent for my tenant, rent for my roommate, I only had to pay $500 a month out. So I went from spending $2,000 a month for housing to $500 a month for housing. The property did not cash flow. The property would not have had a positive cash on cash return or yield, but I was able to save an extra $1,500 a month, from $2,000 out to $500 out, $1,500 extra dollars a month that I then saved up to buy my next property. And every property after that, I had much stricter requirements for my cash flow and my yield. So you have to live somewhere, and you might unfortunately live in an expensive area where the numbers don't make sense, but you can still minimize your largest monthly expense, which is your rent cost every month. And that's how I would assess your first house hack.
Yeah. REI Stoner's awesome, Joshua. I'm right there with you. These guys have made it possible. You've done the work. We've just shared our experiences. So I'm excited that you're winning. Rob, median home prices in San Diego just hit $1 million. Guess I'm looking for a new market. Yeah, I would look for a new market out of California anyway. Landlord Odyssey, they said the lease will be for 1 year and the service member is deployed. His wife and 4 children will live in the unit. They also said that members usually stay 3 to 4 years at a time. Yeah, I think devil's in the details. I would want to see a copy of the lease and just understand what other, caveats might be carved out there. Dan Crusoe, credit score condo, higher income will allow you to have a higher credit card limits. That's true. If you have 40 to 50K available on credit cards, that will help you get to the 800. Absolutely. Yeah. You can't.
As long as you keep your credit card balances
clean.
at 0 or low, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Basically below whatever it is, like 21% utilization or something. June 10%.
10%. If you get to 11%, it takes away 30 points on your score.
Yeah.
It's a crazy low number.
G Lover. Hello, everyone. Good to have you, G Lover. Brett Bisboer, Lumberjack, when you leave the cast iron tub in your rentals, do you make sure the pitch is good or don't worry about it as curtain should be used? So curtain should be used no matter what, period, end of story. However, we do look at them. Yeah, we do at least just throw a level on there, make sure it's at least a few degrees heading towards the drain.
I just took a cast iron tub out and threw it away here, putting in just a walk-in shower.
It
was, I think it was a real good test of the floor.
Yeah.
Getting it out everywhere you stepped. Oh, I think this will hold me.
Exactly. Look up regarding renting out to this landscape company. Thanks. Oh, yeah, you're welcome. This wealth building journey. Chester, what's up? Good afternoon, Matt, Dion, Mike, everyone. REI Stoners. Okay, so just a lawyer on retainer for evictions. Go and sit in the courtroom and watch the ones that are doing evictions and see whose style basically picks up on your weaknesses, because they likely, if they're in court, they will also have their own lease and one that they like to defend and one that they know all the ins and outs of. That's often the landlord that's often the lawyer I recommend, because they'll also usually give you a lease. And then if you show them, hey, if you see them in court and you're just like I've seen a bunch of lawyers in court. I've seen a bunch of them defend tenants. I've seen a bunch of them prosecute tenants, basically from a complaint perspective. Here's what I would tell you. There is going to be a person, guy or girl, that you just, when you see them take the stage, you're just like, yeah, I want that guy. That's how it was with mine.
I think I understand Josh's question here.
Go ahead.
He had the question earlier, once my lawyer draws up a lease.
Yeah, sure.
And we said, just get a lease from me or Mike, because we're in the same state. The other leases are kind of state specific. But we do recommend, once you have a lease,
yes,
have an attorney in your local court system look at it and ask them if there's anything that they would add that would make their job easier if you ever had to go through an eviction together. You might have to retain them. You might give them $100 or $200 to add whatever verbiage. You might do it for free and tell them, you're probably who I'm going to hire if I have an eviction. I retained an eviction attorney, but probably not until I had 5 or 6 units. Right? That's when I thought, I'm just going to retain one for peace of mind. So I don't know, Josh, that you need to retain one before you have your first rental, because if you go through an eviction, you go out and retain one, right? So then you'll need the money. Later, once you have cash flow, peace of mind comes from knowing this is the plumbers I'm going to call, this is the electrician I'm going to call, this is the attorney I'm going to call. It's all kind of set up. I already know their numbers, their hours of service and everything. That can kind of come later.
Yes. Eggy toast. I'm stuck in Cyprus with diarrhea. That's unfortunate. And Mike, that's good advice. Drink water. Yep. Police officer always needing the fire department's help from financial firefighter.
Yes, I assumed you would say something like that.
Jada Fresh, question for Dion: when buying turnkey and the place needs more than 2K in work, is it worth purchasing? Dion.
In the beginning, I tried to stay below 2K buying turnkey, and I never used a turnkey company. So we want to be really clear on what the term means. Like if you're using a turnkey company, that's a very different animal. What I did is I preferred to buy rent ready or already occupied properties that didn't need very much work. My first purchase that needed over 2,000 was my fourplex that needed a roof. So it didn't take much time or energy or effort on my part to get estimates and have the roof done. If it was something that would take more of my time to manage a project, I'd probably wait, but I was investing for the lazy person. There are people who invest their first thing's a BUH and they're fine. I'm 12 years in, 18 units, doing my first BUH, and this will be my last one. And I'm retired and have 24 hours a day that are mine. So this is not the way that I would invest. So how much more than 2,000 is it? That is your part of your cost to acquire. You're going to calculate the yield. Let's say it was 20,000. You knew how much it was going to cost, right? So that's the math part. That's the easy part. How much of your time is it going to take? Is it inhabitable? Will it qualify for lending if it needs more work without going with a rehab loan? So those are all the metrics that I would consider. And then how many deals are you finding in your market? What is the average yield? Did you find one that's going to beat it, even with spending $5,000 or $10,000 to fix it? But then consider the time. And how much would the cost increase if you hired a GC to manage it?
Yeah.
Right? They're going to add 25% to the cost of pretty much everything to have somebody else run that entire project. So if it's small enough to where you could do it, say they want to replace the kitchen. Okay, I would do that. I could tear a kitchen out, I could pay for a demo, use Matt's product to order the kitchen, put the thing in. My friend Chesla that bought a duplex, we rehabbed the whole kitchen there and she still purchased it. Still got a great yield because the cost of those maintenance, that repair items was in the cost to acquire calculation. So math is easy. How much time are you willing to commit? That's the second part.
Yeah, agreed. Mike, Airbnb status, go.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I'm converting the other side of my duplex into an Airbnb because I have a friend who has a very similar sized unit in the exact same area as me near the lake, who makes like $5,000 to $8,000 a month on his Airbnb, and I was making $2,150 a month on my regular rental. So I said, why not? I'll take the risk and I'll give it a shot. It has been, the tenants moved out. It's nice and clean over there. I bought a decent amount of the furniture, most of the furnishings for the property. I bought a bunch of paint, and what I'm going to do today and tomorrow is touch up paint a couple of rooms, paint some trim, put it back together, let it dry, and then I will officially move everything into all the rooms. So that's where I'm at.
Cool. Almost there. I love it. So close.
Yeah.
Andy Borch, my favorite module in your course is your course, Matt, is document your unit, because as an engineer, I hate having to document things, but I appreciate good documentation. I don't know that there's anybody other than a documentation writer that likes to document things. It's a pain in the ass. However, every time, because we don't have all of our documents, all of our units documented, but we have a lot of them, at least core stuff done. It makes my life so easy. When there's a problem, it's literally, yep, here's the tag off the thing, send to the repair guy. It just makes my life so unbelievably easy. When it's like, hey, we broke a sash in the window, or hey, this, this flooring plank, snapped because it was not properly. All of that stuff is awesome and easy to do when you have your unit documented. The paint that you use when there's a turnover in a unit, the paint you use, I mean, just everything. So I really appreciate that, Andy. Thank you very much. Brett Bispor, what I see with cast iron tubs is that they're not level side to side. Yep. If water gets on the edge, it will end up causing subfloor issues. Plus the subfloors are usually rotted. My plumber wants to replace. Yeah. So those tubs, you can get them refinished. The other thing that you can do too is you can also put a rail there on the exterior edge. You can put a rail there that gets installed, and then you can put caulking around it. And you likely won't ever get water on the floor thereafter. What my experience has been when you do a tub replacement is that none of the new tubs that you buy, those plastic ones, they're fiberglass or plastic. I've seen people put their foot through them. I've seen people put their foot through them. It's a problem,
So I have two things I would like to cover really quick.
Please.
First, You mentioned something about getting your paint ready for your units, and then I remembered that Josh just closed on his house hack that he's moving into. And Josh, if you're going to be looking at doing any painting, whether you hire a painter or do it yourself, go to the local Sherwin-Williams, and let them know that you have rentals, right? You have more than one unit, even if you're living in one. And you can generally pick 3 or less colors of paint that you say, these are the colors of paint that I use in all of my sites. So all my rentals have this for the walls, this for the accent wall, this for the ceiling. These are 3 colors I'm always going to use. They'll give you 30% off those 3 colors from then on. So it's a kind of a cool hack to do if you're looking at paint. Make sure you know which colors you want. The other thing was, oh, my memory kicked in. What were you just talking about, Matt?
Talking about the tubs
Documentation.
and documenting a unit.
Documenting unit. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so my memory kicked in, the other thing went away, but I knew that one to cover the Josh thing. Sorry.
It's all right. All good. Julie, do you think any of us will ever retire? Yeah. I mean, what's really funny is I'll spend less time in my property business when I retire from my software business. I'll spend much less time. I'm literally transitioning all of the people that work with us to basically largely take it over so I can run everything from my phone, Dion-esque style.
Any of us ever actually I don't know what else I can do that's more retired other than not talk to a camera. Here's what my schedules look like for like the last week. I walked down to the foot ferry. I took the foot ferry from Port Orchard to Bremerton. We take the fast ferry from Bremerton to Seattle, walk around, get some ice cream, eat at a restaurant, ride the ferries back. Bless you, Matt.
Thank you.
There's not much more real. I mean, I can even start napping on the ferries, I think, if I wanted to be more. I'm trying to think of what can I do that would be less.
You better have taken a shower that morning, otherwise you just blend in too much.
Right. Yeah.
Landlord Odyssey, Mike, when are you retiring? What's your number?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, my goal has been by about age 35. I'm 32, so I turned 33 here in November. Getting old, fellas. I mean, not as old as you guys, but but old. I'm hoping by 35. I think 2.5 more years, I could do it. Honestly, it's a little tricky. Interest rates and the fact that prices are sticking where they are and interest rates suck. It's hard to find good cash flowing rentals. So I might just be faced with a conundrum. With as cheap as some of my properties are, it might just be more beneficial for me to pay it off, have no mortgage payment, and then cash flow 100%. And that might get me closer to my retirement goal. For a while, I thought $10,000 a month would be decent. Matt slapped me in the face and said, wait, do you have to pay for healthcare? And so I said, all right, that makes sense. I should probably plan on a lot more than $10,000 a month in free income.
A friend who has retired recently has really good healthcare coverage, is older than you by 20 years, paying $700 a month for really good healthcare.
Yeah. That's not terrible, but does he got to pay for potentially children for a long time?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got a young son.
That is always the deal breaker for sure.
I got a young son. I hope to have a few more kids, and then it'll get real pricey. So I got to make sure that I
Mike,
thread that needle right. So I'll probably copy Matt's strategy at some point. But yeah, and I appreciate the question, Landlord Odyssey. But I'm still aiming for 35. I also get a nice little benefit of when I retire, I maintain my law enforcement certifications for 5 years after I retire. And in those 5 years, I can work part-time as armed security. So I may be able to quit my 60-hour-a-week job and drop down to 20 hours a week, free up an entire work week for myself, and just work what we all call as off-duty overtime, where we either flag traffic or do like armed security at like sporting events like a Seahawks game. And so I would retire from my hard job, but still bring in a little supplemental extra income until I closed out the rental. So we'll see. It's an evolving process. I'll make it there one day though.
I only know how much older I am than you, Mike, based on how much bigger my bank account is than yours.
A lot bigger.
Want to make another old joke, smart guy?
Yeah. Hey, you know what?
You can outrun me too.
You have a great hairline for your age. Not everybody on the screen can say that. All right.
That's awesome. Nice. Well, I got to cut it short because I got a job I got to do. I got to cut it at 2:00. I got to go do a job. So I have to go, do something before I jump on my call at 2:00. But Dion, any closing thoughts?
Congrats, Nick. Let us know how it goes on that offer you're making.
Yeah, please.
And then the last thing on Rob here, he asked me pros and cons of an irrational fear of spiders. It's not irrational to fear spiders. Those little freaking things can move faster than us, have poison, bite you.
Do you have a recent experience with that deal?
Me and Mike went into my basement and I'm going through with the light and I hear, "Excuse me. There's a spider next to me." That was the spider. So I've bombed and fumigated and I've got basically it looks like a plastic ghillie suit, basically full mask cover, went down, sprayed, did everything. So they're not there anymore.
That's awesome.
Not irrational.
Very cool. And Mike, any closing thoughts other than fear of spiders?
Congratulations, REI Stoners.
Yeah.
You are a living example of what all of our channels is all about. When we
Yep.
first met you, you didn't even think it was possible for yourself to be where you are right now at currently. But watching Matt, watching Dion, Zuber, going to the meetups, I don't know who all's courses you've bought, but you have definitely done the work and been disciplined and found a house hack in an incredibly difficult market nationwide and in an extremely incredibly difficult market locally here in the Seattle area. It is possible. The doomers and gloomers and crash bros are fake news, and well done for nice Dion. Well done for making it happen. And I hope that anybody else out here and the people who are watching look to him as inspiration, because he's been watching us for at least probably a couple of years now. And as of the last couple of weeks, he is now the proud owner of a house hack.
Love it. Love it when I see other people jumping on the ladder. It's fantastic. I know what a amazing journey and experience it's been for me and for all the three of us here. Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing other than the Great Recession of 2007, the beginning part. The end part I loved because I was actually able to start affording to buy stuff again.
But as much
that-
as you've hated, imagine if in 2007, 1/3 of your units were Section 8.
Exactly. Totally agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I would have had 3 paying tenants and not one. It still would have been really bad. But less awful. So as I always say, we try and create great content for you. If you haven't checked out the syllabus on my course, please check out the syllabus on my course. All of the questions and all the things we've talked about today, there's 9.5 hours of content there. And as a bonus, as if you are in the Lumberjack Landlord Bootcamp, we are now doing kitchens for people in the Lumberjack Bootcamp. You get access to being able to buy cabinets at wholesale. Cabinets at wholesale. It's an unbelievable opportunity if you're thinking about having to do a kitchen. Yes, you have to be in the course because we want to make sure we speak like-minded and that we are like-minded, but that we also speak the same language. And you have to be in the boot camp because I am a control freak and I want to be very hands-on when we're having these conversations and make sure that you have a great experience. So check out the course syllabus. Also check out Dion's course and his live coming up Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And Mike, if he ever actually gets his act together and actually puts his remote investing course together. Until then, you can just be visually assaulted by all of his shorts.
Welcome.
And shorts, wearing shorts and shorts.
So I'll put them 5-inch inseams if you need me to. I might do some shorts of that. It's actually not a bad idea.
We do not need any 1980s basketball shorts. I think.
Oh, it's happening now.
Yeah, that's the worst. That is horrible content right there. That's enough to get you banned on at least two or three platforms. As I always say, we try and create great content for you. Make sure that we catch you in the next one. Guys, thanks so much for coming and hanging out. Always appreciated. And yeah, we'll see you guys on Sunday in the live stream. Take care, everybody. Talk soon.
See ya.
Okay.